Just take a minute. Look around you. There's history being made. Has been. Will be. How can there not? Just something about those blue skies, high banks, and high speed, all coming together in one perfect race. And it'll be here sooner than you think.
Roll Tide and welcome to this Thursday edition of Crimson Drive, driven by NASCAR. I'm Roger Hoover. It's great to have you back with us as we get set for homecoming against Mississippi State on Saturday. We'll go through everything coming up on the show with our headlines thanks to our friends at RJ Young. They are the official technology solutions provider of Crimson Drive. They've given us a smart board, and we'll go through all the different headlines, starting with what's coming up on the show today. First things first, we want to hear from the head coach of the Crimson Tide, Nick Saban, as we'll have coach's checklist from his Wednesday night media session. And then we'll go one-on-one with one of the key leaders of this Alabama football team, Will Anderson Jr., here all about how the players are adjusting after the loss to Tennessee last week and now gearing up for Mississippi State. Then we'll talk to Chris Stewart coming up tonight. He's going to host what we know will be a very special edition of Hey Coach and the Nick Saban Show from Baumhower's Victory Grill. Details on the way on that when Chris joins us in a little bit, plus some thoughts on the Mississippi State game. And then we'll talk to Wes Hart, the Crimson Tide soccer team, #1 in the nation, trying to improve to 8-0 in SEC play tonight at Mississippi State. So best of luck to Coach Hart and the Crimson Tide as we're getting now down to the final 3 matches of the regular season for #1, Alabama. Then speaking of the Bulldogs, we'll be talking with their radio broadcaster Neil Price to getting scouting report on Mike Leach's team as we get set for this Saturday, Alabama against Mississippi State. Other headlines for today, starting with Crimson Tide football team. Again, that home matchup with the Bulldogs coming up at 6 p.m. on Saturday. Our radio coverage will start at 3. Kind of like the Tennessee and Arkansas series. Long winning streaks for Alabama going into this year's matchup as Alabama has won the last 14 meetings going back to 2008. Crimson Tide 6-1 in the season after the loss on Saturday against Tennessee. So that's the only loss in conference play. Mississippi State has been up and down a little bit so far this season. 5-2 overall and 2-2 so far in SEC play. Last week they also fell on the road to the Kentucky Wildcats. Speaking of Crimson Tide soccer, #1 in the nation. Basically every new ranking, starting with about 14th in the nation, was a school record. So now #1 in the country for the first time ever. We'll hear thoughts on that from Wes Hart coming up in a bit. McKinley Crone, congratulations to her, the goalkeeper for the Tide, named the SEC Defensive Player of the Week. It's been a long time coming with all the wins she's had. Great work with her in the back line for Alabama. So we love seeing that. Tonight we would love another victory. The Crimson Tide against Mississippi State in Starkville coming up at 6:30 p.m. And then on Sunday, it is Senior Day. It'll be Alabama against Florida at 6 p.m. from the Alabama Soccer Stadium. We do expect Alabama will be hosting and could be hosting for quite a while in the NCAA tournament. So it technically won't be the last home game of the season, but it is the last home SEC matchup of the year. Alabama against the Florida Gators on Sunday. A few other notes around Crimson Tide athletics. The volleyball team last night fell to LSU in 5 sets, a really hard-fought match inside Foster Auditorium. Now this weekend, a pair of matches coming up against Georgia on Saturday and Sunday, so we'll be keeping an eye on that with the volleyball team. How about Enzo Aguiard? He's the singles champion at the ITA Southern Regional. Great performance by him. Gymnastics, also we really have to salute former gymnastics coach Sarah Patterson. She was named to the Academy of Honor for the state of Alabama, so she was recognized by Governor Kay Ivey earlier in the week. Just a great honor for one of the legends of the University of Alabama, Sarah Patterson. A couple of other notes as well. Basketball, we had some media days coverage for you on our Tuesday edition of Crimson Drive, driven by NASCAR, and we got some good news for the Alabama men's basketball team. We saw that 2 players were preseason All-SEC second team, Javon Quinterly as well as Brandon Miller. Alabama preseason #5 pick in the SEC preseason poll. Alabama women's basketball preseason #10 coming into this year. But Christy Curry really likes the team she has here on campus, so we'll be hearing from Nate Oates, Christy Curry, as well as Charles Bediako, Brittany Davis, Jada Rice, and Noah Gurley, all coming up next week on what'll be a fun basketball edition of Crimson Drive next Tuesday. But of course, we're going to be starting this episode by talking with some football and hearing from the head coach of the Alabama football team, Nick Saban, as he met with the media on Wednesday as we prepare for Mississippi State.
Well, we're certainly looking forward to getting back home and playing in Bryant-Denny Stadium on Saturday night. You know, homecoming is a great tradition, and I know it gives everybody, a lot of people who are Alabama folks, an opportunity to come back and refresh some of the relationships and, traditions that they enjoyed when they were here and what they were proud of. And we certainly want to play the game in a way that they can be proud of what we do. I think the big emphasis for the team this week is, playing to win. There's a difference between playing to win and playing to keep from getting beat. When you're playing to keep from getting beat, the game, it's not really about winning. It's about being afraid to mess up, painting negative pictures in your mind of bad things that could happen, and that doesn't help you have success. So we want to be positive, correct mistakes, have the goal to be, go out and be aggressive and execute the way you're capable of executing. Capability and reliability to execute under any circumstance. We certainly have the capacity to do that. We just got to do it with consistency, and that's what we're looking forward, to trying to do. We're really saddened to hear the passing of one of Mississippi State's, players, Sam Westmoreland. Our thoughts and, prayers go out to his family, his friends, the Mississippi State, football team. This is, terrible that a young person is not going to be able to enjoy a successful life. But with that, we're, trying to get ready to play a game. Well, Will Rogers has had a great year last year. He's having an outstanding year this year. They've got a lot of really difficult passing concepts to try to defend. They've got really good players. They understand what they're doing. He understands the offense as well as probably the coach, and goes out there and executes it. And he's very accurate with the ball. He makes quick decisions and judgments. And, so this is a very challenging, offensive team. And I think it's very quarterback oriented. And, him playing well, which he has done all year long, certainly enhances their opportunity to be successful. Yeah, I think, he's done a really, really good job of, being able to stay focused, know what to do. No moment's been too big for him. And as a freshman, you would never know he's a freshman. I don't think the other players on the defense look at him as a freshman because of his maturity and the way he goes about his business. And, he's done a really good job for us this year.
Crimson Drive is driven by NASCAR, and you can experience racing like never before. From the sandy beaches of Daytona to the high banks of one of the most exciting super speedways on the NASCAR circuit. Don't miss out on the 65th running of the Daytona 500 on February 19th, 2023. Witness history in the making and purchase your tickets today at DaytonaInternationalSpeedway.com. So we've heard from the head coach of the Crimson Tide, Nick Saban. Now let's hear from one of the key leaders on this football team, and that is linebacker Will Anderson Jr. He joined us earlier in the week to give his thoughts on what happened Saturday in Knoxville, plus a look ahead to what's coming up this week with Mississippi State. Will, looking back at the game Saturday in Knoxville, what are some lessons learned from that game?
Everybody just needs to be locked in, paying attention to detail. I think the biggest thing that we lacked was just probably communication on defense, but just probably in having intensity.
How important has the leadership on this team been since that game?
It's been very important, very important. It's been important all season. We talked to the guys on yesterday after Stretch Stride, and, me and Bryce, we had some words for the guys, and I think they were very responsive of, what me and Bryce had to say, and, we're looking forward to Mississippi State and getting ready to keep this thing rolling. After
Tennessee got off to a hot start, how did you guys settle into the game and get some stops?
I think it was just everybody being locked in, everybody paying attention, getting the call. Tennessee was going fast. I think Coach Pete just tried to slow it down a little bit for us, not make it so complicated, and, everybody just get the call and roll with it.
And now getting ready for this week against Mississippi State, you've seen them before in their career. What kind of offense do they have? What makes them different?
They're not like a traditional, they do run the ball. They do a lot of passing, most definitely. So we just have to be ready for that and stuff like that.
Do you enjoy going up against different attacks week to week?
Yeah, I think it's a challenge. I think you need to see those type of things. We got to do a great preparation and having everybody come along to be good.
How good was it to see Bryce Young back and healthy and playing at such a high level?
It was good. We're very thankful for Bryce. He does an outstanding job. He did an outstanding job Saturday of leading the offense, and it was good to see him back out there.
Will, thank you for joining us. Roll Tide.
Thank you for having me.
Just take a minute. Look around you. There's history being made. Has been, will be, and it'll be here sooner than you think.
Chris, Roll Tide, it's great to see you. How did everything go? Thank you for joining us. And on our Tuesday edition of Crimson Drive, driven by NASCAR, we had a one-on-one conversation with Ja'Cory Brooks, wide receiver, had a really good game against Tennessee. So you can check that out on demand, also on the Alabama Insider podcast, wherever you get your podcast. Coming up later tonight, it'll be Hey Coach and the Nick Saban Show from Baumhauer's Victory Grill in Tuscaloosa. Of course, Chris Stewart is filling in for Eli Gold as the host of that show, plus calling Alabama football on the radio, and he joins us to preview what's coming up tonight. It's a little bit different of a version of Hey Coach and the Nick Saban Show coming up, so all the details coming up here with Chris Stewart. Chris, Roll Tide, it's great to see you. How did everything go getting from the press box down to the field in Knoxville to shoot the Nick Saban television show?
Survive in advance. That's one of those deals, frankly, when you got that type of scene and setting, there's understandable concern. It only takes one person that is celebrating too much or whatever the case may be, and you've got an issue. Thankfully, I didn't. I had no issues whatsoever other than trying to swim up against upstream against a sea of orange to try to get to the locker room, but I was able to do so with no issues. And trying to find a semi-quiet spot to do the show with Coach was not an easy thing to accomplish either, but the great crew at Crimson Tide Productions got that done for us, and we were able to get it taken care of. And I will also say, because I get asked this, boy, it couldn't have been easy to do the show with Coach afterwards. It's not easy. Nobody's happy when you've lost a ball game like that and you've had that type of circumstance to your rival that ends the streak, all of that. But at the same time, some of the most insightful things that we've gotten from Coach over the years, and he's always terrific with the show, but in losses, tough games like that is sometimes where he's most reflective and gives some just fantastic insight as to what he felt like transpired in the game, where his team is, and what needs to be done going forward for the team. So while I'm never excited to do a show in that circumstance, I don't dread it from a professional standpoint to the level that some people may think, because what he tends to give is really, really good for the audience.
And from your perspective, what are some of those next steps that need to happen for this football team? Because there were a lot of good things that did happen on Saturday.
There's no doubt with the bad things that occurred, you're never in that ball game. And frankly, early Alabama was not in because they failed to make plays and were making too many mistakes. To me, it all begins with penalties. And I've said it in multiple interviews that you can debate and discuss calls all you want, and let's just go with the number 17 was a record high number. We know that, and people that want to complain about that, I get it. We're fans. We care. We don't want it to be fair. We want Alabama to win. That's just natural. Anybody is like that as far as their team is concerned. But even if you dropped that number basically in half and said, okay, you didn't have 17, you only had 9. It's still 9 penalties. That's too many to have on the road against a quality team. And while Tennessee certainly made their share of mistakes, Alabama's penalties, Alabama's failure to make a play here and there. I mean, working backwards, you had 2 deep balls that never should have been allowed to be completed. You got to get better pressure, but you also can't allow, when you know they've got to throw the ball deep downfield, you can't allow that to occur. Back-to-back plays, which set up their field goal. You can't miss a field goal, although it was far from a chip shot. It was one that Will Reichert himself would tell you he needs to make and has made, and we know he will make it in the future. You can't drop a pass inside the 25-yard line that's going to make that field goal much shorter and allow you to bleed the clock in order to have the last chance at winning or go to overtime, rather than allow Tennessee time to do what transpired, and that's throw those 2 deep balls and make the kick. So I've just hit you with 3 or 4 things right there And Roger, those are all in the last 15 seconds. That's not even before we get to that point. That's all in a span of 15 seconds at the end of the ball game. So there's a laundry list of things that Alabama needs to improve on, but not allowing the deep ball, not in and all the things that includes. They've got to be more consistent in the kicking game. There were multiple mistakes made in the kicking game, not just by the kickers themselves. There's a lot that needs to be done and a lot that needs to be fixed. The great thing is you got the best head coach in America, best coaching staff, and you've got a chance to get those things corrected with a roster that we've seen when it plays well is as good as any in the country.
Certainly so. And I know we'll hear more from Coach Saban about that on Thursday night with Hey Coach and the Nick Saban Show. But what else is coming up from Baumhauer's on Thursday?
Yeah, looking forward to it. Always do. But Jenny Mines, who's been a part of Alabama athletics for a long time and a tremendous job with the women's tennis program, and just a terrific person. Look forward to having her be our guest from a coach's standpoint on the program, talking about what's happening with her team and her program, but also the media guest stepping outside the sports realm. But he is no stranger to anybody that's lived in the state of Alabama any length of time at all. James Spann will be the media guest, and we'll get the weather forecast inside Baumhauer's Victory Grill. We'll find out what it's like outside Baumhauer's Victory Grill. We'll get the game day forecast, and we'll let him play sports guy as well and ask Coach a few questions over the course of the evening.
Does that mean you're going to wear suspenders as well?
Only if the weather is bad. We may go suspenders if the weather, you know, it's bad weather. The fewer clothes James has on, the worse the weather is. I don't want to be tuned in when Armageddon is occurring. It's just not going to be good.
Definitely the case. Well, something we are looking forward to is coming up very, very shortly, and that's basketball season. We'll be talking a lot more basketball on Crimson Drive in the next few weeks. We have SEC Media Days in Birmingham earlier in the week, and we've heard that Alabama is picked to finish 4th in the preseason SEC poll, and this looks to be a really talented team that Nate Oates has coming up this season.
No doubt about that, Roger. It's a very talented team, a lot of young, new pieces as well. Even some of the veterans are new, but from a talent, a personnel standpoint, there are a lot of arrows in the quiver available to Nate Oates, and hopefully we'll be hitting bullseye this year from deep, especially, which was a bit of an issue last year for his team.
And one correction, Alabama picked to finish 5th, but again, that's only fuel to the fire for Nate Oates and the Crimson Tide getting ready for this upcoming season. And Chris, all the best as you get ready for a busy weekend of broadcasts coming up. Thank you again for joining us here on Crimson Drive. Roll Tide.
Roll Tide, Roger. Thanks so much.
Great to hear from Chris, and we really can't wait for James Spann to join us coming up tonight as our media guest for Hey Coach and the Nick Saban Show from Baumhauer's Victory Grill. Don't forget the show starts at 6:30, and of course, Coach Saban will join us at the restaurant coming up at 7 o'clock across the radio network. Also, we'll have a video stream available through UA Athletics and the Crimson Tide Sports Network. We'll be listening to Coach Saban on the show while also keeping an eye on everything that's going on in Starkville, Mississippi. No, we're not talking about football. Well, it's a different type of football, I guess, for a moment, as we're talking about the #1 ranked team in the country, the Alabama Crimson Tide soccer team. And earlier this week, we had a chance to visit with Wes Hart only a few minutes after we learned that Alabama was ranked #1 in the latest soccer rankings. And he was, of course, overjoyed that Alabama is #1 on the season, as he gives us a preview of what's coming up tonight against Mississippi State and on Sunday here in Tuscaloosa against Florida. This is Roger Hoover, now joined by the head coach of the #1 soccer team in the country, the Alabama Crimson Tide, Wes Hart. Roll Tide, how's it just, first of all, here to hear Alabama #1 in the nation in soccer?
Pretty incredible, and especially coming from where we were, when I first got here in 2015 to where we are now, it's amazing, and it just shows that with hard work and staying true to who you are and what you're doing, it pays off. And so, super excited with where we're at right now, but at the same time, we're hungry for more.
What's been fueling this winning streak? Alabama's off to a 7-0 start in SEC play.
Yeah, gosh, I wish I could point to one single thing, but I think just a combination of a lot. Mostly, people buying into what we're doing, and certainly as we got results over the year, throughout the year, I think it just built confidence and belief in what we're doing, and with belief, comes better performances and more wins.
Certainly does, and Alabama's playing at a high level, scoring a lot of goals. Riley Mattingly-Parker's been scoring a lot of goals for you as well. Just what can you tell our fans about the journey she's had from when you first started recruiting her back in 2015 to where we are now?
Yeah, Riley's a special kid, and we knew that, recruiting her. We knew we were getting a heck of a player, and it's taken a while for her to truly blossom into the player that she is right now. There has been some highs and lows along the way, but this year she's the player that we thought we were getting a few years ago. So super happy for her, especially considering what's happened to her with the injury, the ACL tear, and for her to come back and be a better player. She looks fitter, stronger, more athletic, more determined than ever, and so just super happy for her.
And helping her score a lot of those goals, the nation's leader in assists, Felicia Knox. So when we chatted in the summer, you knew she was about to have a big season. Just kind of what did you see then, and how she paid it off throughout the year?
Felicia's another one that I think Felicia was a little bit hidden in the recruiting process. I don't know that a lot of people really kind of saw what we saw in her. She's, again, like Riley, she's she's everything we thought she would be and more. She's always, we felt like, man, she just has a good feel for the game. I wish I could take credit for a lot of what she does, but she just gets it, right? She just has a good feel for the game. She's composed, she's comfortable on the ball, she's got good vision, she's an intense competitor. I mean, just so many wonderful qualities about her, and it's awesome to see the level at which she's playing at right now.
As the rankings keep going up to now #1 in the nation, the accolades keep racking up. Have you still seen a humble approach from this team, a hard-working approach match to match?
Yeah, without question, and I believe it's fueling us even more. I think with each new week, with each big win, with each new ranking that comes out, you just don't get a sense of complacency with this group. Almost the opposite. It almost feels like they're feeding off the energy. I think for this group, that was certainly under the radar, nationally as well as even in Tuscaloosa, right? I mean, haven't had a lot of attention over the years, but now with each big win, with the new rankings that come out each week, you see more and more fans out there. You hear more and more around the community about Alabama soccer, and I got to believe that the team loves hearing that and wants more. So it's been awesome.
Well, Sunday was great, getting a 2-1 win over 7th-ranked Arkansas. Now you get ready for a big week ahead. First going to Mississippi State on Thursday, then back at home on Sunday against Florida. Just what's on tap this week?
Yeah, a very tough Mississippi State team, and a team that's done well in their SEC West division games. With the win on Thursday, we've got a chance to clinch the SEC West title. If Mississippi State beats us, then they win the title. So certainly a lot of stake there, and I'm sure it's going to be a great environment. They've been getting big crowds, and which is what we want to play in, right? It makes it more exciting. So going to be a tough match. They're a physical, athletic, tough team. And then after that game, we'll host Florida at home on Sunday night. It's our senior night, last regular season game of the season, and hoping to have a big crowd. Our crowds have been awesome this season, and without question a big reason why we've been successful.
We look forward to it. Wes Hart, thank you for joining us. Roll Tide.
Awesome. Roll Tide.
Best of luck to Coach Hart and the Crimson Tide coming up tonight at Mississippi State, plus Sunday against Florida, and what will be senior day, a very emotional senior day, coming up at the Alabama Soccer Stadium at 6 p.m. here in Tuscaloosa. We're looking forward to the Crimson Tide trying to continue their winning ways, try to win the SEC West coming up this evening. Well, we're still talking about Mississippi State, but now we'll go back to the gridiron and talk some football with the voice of the Bulldogs, Neil Price. As we look at Mike Leach's team, they've been on an interesting journey so far this season, 5-2 overall, including going 2-2 in SEC play. So it's been an up and down season so far for Mississippi State. Let's get a scouting report on the Bulldogs from Neil Price. Neil, how's everything going in Starkville as we get ready for this annual matchup between Mississippi State and Alabama?
Everything's fine. You just got two teams that are real interested in getting a win on Saturday. And I think you'd have to probably go back a while to find a time when both of them were coming in off a loss. So, we'll see. Clearly, State could have played a lot better. And I think that's the focus this week in practice, is having those guys do their job and try to do it with some consistency, because for the first time in about a month, they didn't do that at Kentucky. So we'll see what happens.
What can you tell us about the week-to-week journey this team has been on? We know Mississippi State's 5-2, including going 2-2 in the SEC.
Well, I think it's been about trying to build consistency. Mike Leach's message is not a very complicated one. He's a lot like Bill Belichick when you listen to him. Do your job. The team that will win the game is the team that can do its job and play the next play more times in a row than the other. Now, we all know that is much harder to do than it sounds. It sounds very simple, right? We all ought to be able to do that. So we all should be successful, but that's just not the reality of it. So, the message doesn't change much week to week. It doesn't change depending on opponent. It's the same thing over and over and over, trying to get State's players to be the very best version of themselves that they can on the football field. So, I think now that he has an older team, that message resonates a lot more. The light bulb has come on for more guys in year 3 with him, especially guys like Will Rogers, who got thrown into the fire 2 years ago and had to become a starting quarterback as a freshman in the second half of that first year here. I think he has a better understanding of the offense. And on defense, you've got a bunch of guys who've played a lot of football here, and a lot of them who have had finally some continuity with Zach Arnett as the coordinator for now 3 years, that they understand the system that he's trying to implement. So all of that stuff kind of comes together, and it's led to a good start. Now, it doesn't mean there haven't been bumps in the road, and Saturday was certainly one of them. But I do think that they are a much better collective group than they have been at any point since Mike Leach has been here.
When Will Rogers is playing at his best, what does he do well?
Well, he makes the right reads. He gets the ball out of his hand quickly. And if you look at his numbers this year, the touchdown to interception ratio has been really good. And if we're being completely honest about it, you could probably take 2 or 3 of those interceptions off of him. That's not how it's scored, but instances where guys have either had the ball in their hands and had it taken away, or guys have been hit right in the numbers and it's bounced off the shoulder pads and been picked off by, someone from the other team. So I think it's fair to say maybe he's thrown 2. Now, the one he threw Saturday is the first time I've seen him just make a really bad decision this year. He threw it right to DeAndre Square. So he hasn't had many of those moments. I think he's also got a better understanding of being able to look across the line of scrimmage, understand what kind of box he's looking at defensively, and getting his team into a play that results in positive yardage. Not trying to force a pass downfield when maybe the defense isn't set to give you a window downfield. Instead, a handoff's a good play. See if you can get 2 or 3, just keep moving the ball forward. He's doing a much better job of that than he has at any other point in his career. So, Will's a really good quarterback. There's a narrative out there that he's a quarterback in a dink and dunk offense. And I think if you look at some of the advanced analytics that are available now, I think you could see that he's much more than that. And I think he's proven it to State people. I'm not sure he's been able to prove it across a national narrative for whatever reason, but I do believe he is a really, really good quarterback and a guy who deserves every accolade he's been given to this point.
Who are some of his favorite targets, and does he distribute the ball pretty evenly in the passing game?
Oh, yeah. 9 guys caught a pass last week. 9 different guys, I think, have caught a touchdown pass in the first, 7 games of the year. He's hit as many as 13 different guys in a game, if memory serves. So that's a byproduct of the offense. The offense is designed that way. So who are his favorite targets? I don't know that I can give you a great answer because of the distribution. And I don't know that he really locks in on a guy on 3rd down, or he locks in short yardage necessarily. I just don't think the offense is set up in such a way that it allows you to do that. He's got plenty of good options. I'll put it that way. He's got older guys like Austin Williams, who has some of the best hands maybe of any guy who's played here in the slot. He's got guys on the edge who have proven to be explosive, like Caleb Ducking and Ra Thomas. Tula Griffin's another guy who kind of falls into that, though he's gotten a lot more probably accolades for his kick return skills than he has at what he's done at wide receiver. And he's had two really good running backs, Woody Marks and Dylan Johnson, who, if you get them the ball in space, they can make plays. You know, you can throw them a 3-yard pass and they could turn it into a 15 or 20-yard pass just because they've got some athleticism and agility in the open field. So to say a favorite target, I just don't know that there is one. And these are guys on the coaching staff here who will tell you, you know, a lot of people as fans, you know, and I'm guilty of this too. It's you want to look at, oh, well, you don't have 1,000-yard receiver or you don't have 1,000-yard back. I don't think this offense has ever been designed to do that. I think they'd like to take two guys at every position and create one really good one, because in their mind, you get more reps in a game, you develop people better that way, and it forces an opposing defense to try and account for more people. So I think all of that, it's a long answer to say I don't know. But I mean, I think that's kind of what it's been for State since Mike Leach has been here.
On the other side of the ball, who are some of the real playmakers that are helping that Mississippi State defense get stops?
Well, Emmanuel Forbes is a guy who comes to mind right away. He picked up his 5th interception of the year at Kentucky this past Saturday and ran it back for a touchdown. So he's got 5 interception returns for touchdowns in his career. That's tied for the most in the history of the SEC. You know, he's just got a nose for the ball. That's the best way I could describe it. And as good as he is in coverage, he's a physical guy too. So he can come downhill, he can tackle, he can do all the things you need him to do. I think he's probably established himself as maybe one of the best defensive backs in the history of the program. He's certainly one of the best since I've been here in 5+ years now. That defensive line has got some depth. Cameron Young, Randy Charlton, Jordan Davis is back this year. Jordan's finally getting to a point mid-season now where he's been able to knock the rust off after he missed an entire year, and we're starting to see him become more of a playmaker. Nathan Pickering is a guy who they've been able to cross-train and move around at all those spots on the defensive line. So they've got some depth at that spot that maybe they did not have a season ago. And you got veteran linebackers, guy from Maplesville, Alabama, Buki Watson has been one of the leading tacklers on this team. So is Jet Johnson. They have played a lot of football here. Tyra Sweet might be the best overall athlete on that defense, that third linebacker, guy who, you know, can be really disruptive and can move around to a lot of different places on the field. So, you know, they have got some playmakers there, and they've gotten better at the back. You know, they've given up a big play or two, but not like they did a year ago. And I think that, you know, Jackie Matthews, transfer from West Virginia, deserves some credit for that. I think Jalen Green, who's in his 2nd year here after coming over from Texas, deserves some credit for that. And then Colin Duncan's an older guy who's been around for a while that has played his entire career here and has certainly, you know, given him an opportunity to have somebody back there who can help him get organized. So, you know, I've given you a bunch of names, but the reality is it's been a team effort on that side. And I think with the way that Zach Arnett likes to play on defense, when you're putting so many guys in situations where they got to be one-on-ones, or those safety guys really do have to be good because they're committing numbers to a blitz or bringing all these different pressures. Yeah, everybody kind of has to do their job to avoid giving up those big plays.
Now, looking ahead to Saturday, just what needs to happen for Mississippi State early in this ball game to make sure this game doesn't turn into a couple of the games we've seen recently in this series?
Well, they got to have a good start, you know, and that's easier said than done against Alabama's defense, especially when you got an elite edge rusher out there like Will Anderson, you know. So, I mean, they have been a good starting team. They didn't show up at Kentucky on Saturday, but they've been a very good starting team. I think it's 66-7. They've outscored opponents in the first quarter. So they need to find a way to get a good start on the road, make some good things happen. You can't turn the ball over because the team you're playing is already plenty good enough. They don't need any help. So you can't give the ball away with careless turnovers or mistakes. And I think the other thing defensively, you just got to be solid. Find a way to keep Alabama's athletes in front of you so that you give yourself a chance to make plays and force them to have to string together some long drives to take the ball down the field. You know, give them an opportunity to try and make a mistake. That's kind of the approach I think people have taken against the air raid, early on with Coach Leach. Okay, let's drop 8 guys in coverage and force them to make a mistake or force them to put together 10 and 11 play drives, because it's just hard to do that. So, force them to have to do that. I think State's got to do some of that with Alabama, force them to try and put some long drives together and, make them play perfect. Again, all easier said than done, but just kind of looking at it, that's what I think.
Well, we're looking ahead to Saturday, Alabama against Mississippi State in Tuscaloosa. Neil Price, the voice of the Bulldogs, thank you so much for joining us and giving us the Mississippi State perspective as we get ready for this matchup. Safe travels. We'll see you Saturday.
See you Saturday, Roger.
Thanks to Neil Price for joining us as we get ready for Alabama against Mississippi State, and that's the focus of our Wickles Weekend Update, brought to you by Wickles Pickles. They are wickedly delicious. Find out more at wickles.com. Let's take a look at what's coming up on the Crimson Tide Sports Network this weekend. Coming up tonight, Hey Coach and the Nick Saban Show, Baumhower's Victory Grill in Tuscaloosa. It starts at 6:30. Jenny Mines will be our first coach that's on Hey Coach, and then during the Nick Saban Show, you'll hear James Spann as our media guest, so we really look forward to that coming up later tonight. Tomorrow, make sure you download the This Week on the CTSN podcast to get all of our best content from throughout the week. That'll help get you ready for Saturday, Alabama against Mississippi State. It's homecoming in Tuscaloosa. 3 o'clock will hit the radio for the 6 p.m. kickoff between the Tide and the Bulldogs, trying to win 15 straight against Mississippi State. Sunday, we'll take a look back at the ball game with the Nick Saban television show, as well as Tide TV this week. And then on Monday night, we'll start our new week of programming with Crimson Tide Rewind coming up from Baumhower's Victory Grill in Vestavia Hills. Crimson Drive is driven by NASCAR, and I don't want you to miss out on your chance to experience the energy and excitement of the iconic Daytona 500. Witness history in the making. Purchase your tickets today at DaytonaInternationalSpeedway.com. It's going to wrap up this edition of Crimson Drive, driven by NASCAR. And do want to note that next week we'll still have editions of the show coming up on Tuesday and Thursday, but we're going to be looking at some basketball coming up, as we had a chance to be in Mountain Brook, Alabama, in the Birmingham area at SEC Basketball Media Days over this past week. We had a chance to talk some Crimson Tide basketball, both on the men's side and the women's side as well. Richard Hendricks came down, former great Tide player, and now an SEC Network analyst, and he was part of our coverage there, so you won't want to miss that coming up next week. And we'll also kind of give a mid-season or a midterm of Alabama football during the bye week coming up as well. But I do want to make sure you know that we are back for Crimson Drive coming up next week as well. Got to say a special thank you to Will Anderson Jr. for joining us, along with Chris Stewart, Wes Hart, and Neil Price as our guests today, as well as Coach Saban's comments earlier. Thanks to our video producer, Ethan Carabin. He put the entire show together, and thanks to all of you for watching. For everybody with the Crimson Tide Sports Network, this is Roger Hoover signing off on this Thursday afternoon. Now let's get ready to beat Mississippi State. Thanks for watching. Roll Tide.